So this session for today is really going to be focused on a kind of historical journey. So I'm going to do a guided meditation, um, start off with some breath work. We'll do a muscle relaxation technique to get everybody's bodies nice and relaxed. And then we're going to go on a journey, and we're going to start in the 1600s. And then progressively, I'm going to walk you through the different eras. And my hope is that you all will be able to empathize with the scenario that led up to, well, MLK's prominence, but also just to understand a little bit more about race relations and what it means for Black people and what really happened last year and how it all kind of ties together. So this is going to be a journey that I have designed. I hope for it to be very relaxing for you. I hope that you'll find something spiritual and meaningful in the words and in the experience. And then there's going to be several quotes from Martin Luther, and we'll end after about an hour. So yeah, so I hope you guys all enjoy the journey, feel relaxed, and pull something away from it, something that maybe you didn't have before.
Well, welcome everyone. My name's Cyrus Worrells, and I'm Director of Programs at the Institute for Spirituality and Health. And for those of you, I see many new faces, so thank you for joining us. And if you've never been to an ISH program before, or haven't in a while, ISH is a 65-year-old organization, one of the early founding institutions of the Texas Medical Center. And we've done a number of things over the years since 1955, starting the first nationally accredited chaplaincy program, working a lot with biomedical ethics in collaboration with Baylor and other medical center institutions. We have a lot of programs for healthcare practitioners, teaching them how to better care and tend to patients' spiritual needs, as well as many public health initiatives and other programs for the community, exploring your own spirituality and how it intersects with your health. And our mission across all of this broad, diverse range of programming is to enhance well-being by exploring the relationship between spirituality and health in all of the forms that may take. And one form or one definition, it's hard to define spirituality, but want to offer this definition that is given by our president, John Graham, which is that spirituality is our innate ability to connect with one another, to connect with our environment, to connect with the transcendent mystery that many of us call God or Allah or Krishna, or maybe choose not to name, and to connect with ourselves. And I think it is through that connection, it's through fostering that connection that we become healthier in mind, body, and spirit. And I think the more we connect deeply with ourselves, the more we are able to connect with others. And that's why I think I'm happy and excited about the program that we have on this Martin Luther King Day with Jeremiah, because I think it's unique in its experiential nature, that we're trying to get into a felt sense of African American history and the life and the meaning of the life of MLK, and to feel that sincerely and deeply in our hearts, so that we can embody it. So that's probably enough from me. I'm privileged to welcome Dr. Jeremiah Pearcey, who's the newest member of our staff at the Institute. Came to us through serendipitous set of connections, as many of us have found ourselves at ISH, kind of a gravity of meaning and what's important brought him into connection with us. And he brings a wealth of experience. He has a doctorate in cognitive psychology from Saybrook University. He's also a military veteran, having served in the US Air Force. And he has a wealth of experience in stress management and facilitating spiritual experiences, as well as African American psychology and working in community-based programs. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremiah. Thanks so much for being with us, all of you, and thank you, Jeremiah.
Thank you, Cyrus. Appreciate the intro. And it's been my pleasure to work with ISH. They are an amazing organization filled with amazing people. And so thank you all for having me and letting me run this program, which is very near and dear to my heart. So thank you all for being here. And again, I really do want this to not just be a focus on the relaxation, but to also have some focus on empathy, to empathize with an experience that maybe you've never had, to really empathize with peoples that may not even be alive right now, and to empathize really with the plight that has persisted to this day, beginning anew last year in the wake of the George Floyd killing. So I hope you find this to be spiritually significant, as well as culturally, and maybe even learn something about yourself. And we'll begin this with a passage from one of MLK's speeches that I found to be very evocative emotionally, as it relates still to the things that are going on this day. And also, I'd like to invite you all, before I start, to, if you would feel more comfortable, to turn off your cameras, to just make sure that your microphone is muted, and find a place that is comfortable for you. Find a place where you can sit and relax, preferably a place that can support your neck, just so that you're the most comfortable you can be. So if you would like to, please feel free to turn off your cameras, and we'll begin here. And in a second, I'll also just ask you to close your eyes, and then we'll go on a journey together. So MLK said, "There comes a time when people get tired. We are here this evening to say to those who have mistreated us so long that we are tired. Tired of being segregated and humiliated, tired of being kicked about by the brutal feet of oppression. We have no alternative but to protest. For many years, we have shown amazing patience. We have sometimes given our white brothers the feeling that we liked the way that we were being treated. But we come here tonight to be saved from the patience that makes us patient with anything less than freedom and justice. If we protest courageously and yet with dignity and love, when the history books are written in the future, somebody will have to say, there lived a race of people, of Black people, of people who had the moral courage to stand up for their rights, and thereby they injected new meaning into the veins of history and civilization. We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. And frankly, I have never yet engaged in a direct action movement that was well timed according to the timetable of those who have not suffered unduly from the disease of segregation. For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with a piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We have waited for more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights. The nations of Asia and Africa are moving with jet-like speed toward the goal of political independence, and yet we still creep at a horse and buggy pace toward the gaining of a cup of coffee at a lunch counter. And so as you think about that passage and what it means for you, just recognize the plight of African Americans that still to this day are being told wait, are being told we're not oppressed. Yet still, the pain is there. The pain is evident. Throughout the country, last year, millions marched because of that pain. And maybe you yourself know the pain, or maybe you have never experienced it yourself. So on this journey, I really ask you and invite you to empathize with that experience and just see what it would be like through those eyes, through the eyes of someone with darker skin. And now we'll begin the relaxation portion. And again, this will be a journey. So we'll be doing this for about an hour. So find a place that is comfortable for you. And feel free to turn off your cameras and relax, because this will be relaxing. And then we'll begin with a breathing technique that I like to use. And for this breathing technique, all you need to do is simply follow my prompts. So we'll do an inhale to the count of 5 and an exhale to the count of 5. And all you need to do is match your breathing to my count. And we'll begin now. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now just notice the breath. Continue to breathe slowly and comfortably, and just begin to feel gravity pulling you down into the chair, perhaps even the bed, and just begin to feel the muscles relaxing, feeling the weight of the muscles as gravity begins to pull you down. And it's always such an interesting thing to me, gravity. It is ubiquitous. Everything in our world is affected in some way by gravity, whether it's simply holding it to the ground or the weight of the actual object. Gravity plays a significant part of our daily lives, yet we rarely ever think about gravity and what it is doing throughout our day? When was the last time you stood up and said, oh, there's gravity? And have you walked and just felt the heaviness of your legs plod to the floor? And so as you think about gravity, I just want you to notice how often you are distracted from that actual topic, how often you neglect to even think about gravity, yet it is everywhere. It is in everything. We know it exists. We can see the effects. And so your brain is powerful in that way. It has the ability to notice and to not notice. It has the ability to feel gravity or not feel it. And it also has the ability to be here or to be somewhere else. And really, this is a lesson of focus. And what you focus on affects how you behave. So as you continue to relax, beginning to feel the muscles perhaps growing heavier and heavier, we'll begin to relax the entire body down into the chair, noticing just how comfortably heavy your body can become. So just begin to feel a relaxation growing. And it can sometimes work like the end of a shower. As you turn off the nice, warm, comfortable water and the last few drops land on the top of your head, and it feels so relaxing, so comfortable. And just let that comfortable relaxation grow on the top of the head and then begin to move down. And just begin to relax the muscles. Relax the muscles in the forehead as the trickle moves down to the cheeks and jaw, letting all the muscles in your cheeks and jaw rest. Then down to the neck and relaxing the neck, letting all those muscles loosen, feeling the head perhaps become heavier, feeling the relaxation move down to the shoulders, letting the shoulders go limp, feeling gravity pulling them down as the muscles loosen. And then feel it travel down your arms to the fingertips, down to the bicep, the elbow, the forearm, the wrist, and then the hand, relaxing all the muscles along the way. Just allowing yourself to be a little more comfortable still, a little more relaxed. And then feel the relaxation moving down your chest and back, down to your stomach and low back, all the muscles releasing. Feel that nice release of tension in the muscles, down to your hips and then the thighs. And the thighs are the powerhouse of the body. And so we spend a little more time relaxing the thighs and just begin to feel the heaviness of the thighs, feeling every muscle let go, feeling them become more relaxed, that comfortable relaxation, which can be a nice tingling, a warmth, or even a heaviness. No matter what it is for you, just kind of allow that to grow. And as it expands downward, any negative thoughts or feelings, any stress or tension you may have, just imagine it like a tube of toothpaste being squeezed out of the very bottom, emptying out that tube of toothpaste. And as the comfort moves down, just push out all of that stress and tension, just like the toothpaste. The comfort moving down to your knees, down to your calves, your ankles, and then your feet. Any of the negative energy or any tense or troubling thoughts, just let them flow out of the bottom of the feet. Feel the release. And as that tension releases, feel the comfort. Feel more and more relaxed as we begin our journey. And our journey first begins in 1619. And on this topic, Martin Luther King said, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. So as we begin to do the journey, whatever it appears for you, just keep moving. It doesn't have to be exactly what I'm saying, but really just let your mind drift to these places. So in 1619, the first African American indentured servants arrived in the American colonies. And to do that, they had to board a vessel. And perhaps you can see yourself on that vessel, down in the hull of the ship, perhaps finding yourself chained to the side of the ship. Maybe you hear chanting as the group of other indentured servants are trying to build hope, to defeat the darkness that has consumed them as they are torn from their families, their friends, their world. And then sitting on that dank ship, perhaps listening to the water dripping from the ceiling above, with very little clothing and perhaps no idea even what these captors are saying, and knowing very little about them or where you're going, what purpose they even want you for. And as the boat gets closer to shore and they begin to move everyone from the larger vessel into smaller vessels to bring to the shore, the feelings that you may have looking upon this world that looks nothing like your world, being with these people that look nothing like your people. And not only are they nothing like your people, but they can be vicious. And by 1690, every colony in the Americas has slavery. It becomes a growing industry. And by 1831, thousands and thousands of slaves have been brought to the country. And as slaves begin to flood this country, being used for everything from picking cotton to textile work to even fur trading. And as the world begins to change, people also begin to change. And there becomes an abolitionist movement that says it is not right to enslave people. And they formulate a plan to free the slaves, to give them rights. And so, at the beginning of 1831, you may find yourself as a slave on a plantation. Now, you may have been on that plantation for a while, and it's becoming increasingly apparent that if you stay, your life, perhaps even the lives of the people that live with you, are in danger. All of the servants, the handmaids, the workers. And so you decide one night that tonight will be the night you flee, because it is better to flee from this place than it is to suffer your entire life on that plantation. And so you figure out a way to escape and head north. And so that night, as you sit in your small chambers, barely enough room for you to even stand, the bunk so small you have to curl up into a ball just to lie down. And as you wait there, watching the lights in the windows of the house of your master, you might begin to feel that anxiety, feel the stress building as you begin to wonder how this will work out, as you hope that you can get away successfully, because you know what happens if you do not. You have heard the stories of slaves that have failed. Perhaps you had even seen a few slaves strung up in a tree along a road, a warning to other slaves that your life is not that valuable, that your people are not that powerful. And so you fret and wait. You wait for the light to go out, and it finally does late into the night. And as the light goes out, you prepare to leave, but then stop, unsure if someone could still be walking around. You wait. You wait longer. You lie there for an hour or two more before finally garnering the courage to leave. And so you pack all your stuff up, which amounts as little more than the clothes on your back, and maybe a couple scraps of food, which you hope will last you at least a week on your journey. And then you sling it over your back and slowly escape. And at first your heart is racing. Perhaps you're even beating sweat, feeling the tension. What if they see me? What if somebody sees me? What if a dog barks and alerts? You know that dogs can track you for miles. There have been very few successful slaves in escaping. And so you hurry down a hill into the trees and brush, where you feel a little safer now. You can feel that anxiety slowly decreasing as you begin to look up at the night sky, the moon full and bright, stars that scatter from one horizon to the next, beautiful colors in the sky. And for just a moment, you feel relieved. You feel that you actually might make it. And so you move down the banks and forge across the river. And now you're starting to put miles between yourself and the plantation, and you are starting to feel more confident, starting to feel more relaxed. And so you walk and walk and walk through the entire night. And when morning breaks. You have a choice. Do you keep walking and risk being seen? Perhaps stumbling on a road or a plantation you didn't know was there, only to be stopped and strung up. And so you again start to fret. Perhaps you lie down, find a nice place to hunker down and rest through the day, moving along at night. Perhaps you walk ahead through the daylight, carefully monitoring the situation. Whatever it is for you, just notice the fear you must be in. Notice perhaps even the doubt as you have no idea truly where you're going, but still you just walk north, walking north step by step. You put even more distance, and suddenly maybe you don't fear the dogs as much anymore. After several days, you're beginning to feel that you're free, feel that you have escaped. And so you continue marching north. And eventually, after several weeks and maybe several close calls, maybe even hearing dogs barking in the distance that got your heart racing. But you make it. You make it to the north. And even though the north has free Black people, there's still a good amount of the population that wouldn't be seen with a Black person in their company. And so you decide that others need the same freedom you do. And perhaps you formulate a newspaper, an abolitionist newspaper, an anti-slavery newspaper, just like Frederick Douglass did in 1846, establishing the North Star newspaper, where abolitionist ideas could be spread far and wide, where slaves in the South were given hope, hope that there were people that valued their life. And so you decide to make this even greater. And you decide there needs to be a railroad of people that would protect the human life, people that value the contents of someone's character rather than the color of their skin. And you find a way to not just work with Black people, but to work with white as well. And you create what would be later known as the Underground Railroad. And from 1831 to 1861, approximately 75,000 slaves are freed. 75,000 slaves escape to the north, free of the vicious and brutal oppression of Southern slave owners, of governors, of generals. And so perhaps you begin to think things are changing, times are changing, and there is hope that your people will be equals someday. In fact, there is a man running for president, a man with a strange top hat that has some interesting ideas that have made him rather unpopular amongst some folk. But still, he is elected. And in 1863, this man Abraham Lincoln gives a proclamation that slaves in the southern states will be free forever. And that is when you feel hopeful. You feel that your work not only saved lives, but may save your entire race from the brutality that you have witnessed firsthand, of the many lives lost, sacrificed to a plantation owner. And that hope begins to swell. Perhaps one day we'll even be able to vote. And you talk with your kids, perhaps your other family members. Maybe you're able to meet people that are your family, that are your blood, that you didn't even know existed because they were sold down the river, sold down the river to another owner. But as the years go by, you begin to realize that not much has really changed. In fact, in some ways, it becomes even worse. As a foe, freedom is established. And instead of building a nation on equality, they decided to build one on constraint and oppression. And from 1866 onward, the Black Codes would be passed. The Black Codes formulated by Confederate state congressmen, but still, you hope. You hope that despite these laws that forbid you from even holding a well-paying job, laws that force you to pay a fine just to not work the fields, laws that tell you you can't go in a certain city, that you can't be out at a certain time, laws that make you lesser. And so perhaps you lose a little bit of hope, a little bit of hope of what could be for your kids, for your children's children. But still you fight. You fight through the Jim Crow segregation laws that would be formed at the turn of the century. Jim Crow laws that made it astoundingly clear that you are not welcome, that you are not wanted, that you are not even considered to be one of them. And in fact, even the government would go on to say this is the truth. As in 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson, the Supreme Court ruled that segregation is constitutional, that segregation would be upheld by this country. In fact, it would be upheld for many years after as a separate but equal, that you and your people are equal, yet somehow unfit to be in the presence of white folk, unfit to sit on a bus with white folk, unfit to go to their schools, their churches, their jobs. And so you may despair. And as time passes, perhaps kids grow and take over that generation. And then the next generation. It would take nearly 60 years for Jim Crow laws to be taken down. 60 years you are told that you are separate but equal. But in being equal, you are still lesser. In fact, violence would grow as the Ku Klux Klan rises to prominence, making it aboundingly clear that you are not welcome, as crosses burn in your yard, as neighbors are strung from their trees, as people you know are tied behind moving vehicles and dragged through the streets. And so you despair more. But perhaps you still have some hope. And so the years passed by, and in 1954, the first real opposition to segregation and Jim Crow laws lands on the shoulders of a little black girl. In the case of Brown versus the Board of Education, and all this little girl and her parents wanted was for her to be educated, for her to have the same chances and opportunities that other white children her age had. And so, in that case, 60 years after the separate but equal laws were approved as constitutional, segregation is finally disbanded, ruled unconstitutional. But the trouble doesn't end there, as still remnants of Jim Crow laws persist. And perhaps somebody you know begins to defy these segregatory practices. But it still came down to a woman that would not give up her seat, that held her dignity despite these practices. And Rosa Parks in 1955 is arrested for breaking a city ordinance where she refused to give up her seat on a public bus for a white man. And this act would be the initial spark that would change this country forever. And not only that, but through her act, Martin Luther King Jr. rises to prominence. In 1957, he and many others set up the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which would be one of the leading engines of the civil rights movement. And now Dr. King was a very charismatic man. And as a charismatic man, he was very empathetic, focused merely on us as humans. He would go on to say that love is the greatest force in the universe. It is the heartbeat of the moral cosmos. He who loves is a participant in the being of God, because God is love. And his speeches would draw crowds from all over the country. Thousands and thousands would flock to his lectures, to his sermons, just to have a sense of the pride and passion that he carried. And through his leadership and through his charismatic an unending passion to protect his people and create a world for his children, the Civil Rights Act would be signed in 1964, prohibiting the discrimination of all kinds. And so there, you feel the hope again. Things are changing. The winds have blown the other direction. And suddenly the momentum is on your side and you have hope. You can feel relaxed again. And even though you know that this will not likely end immediately, that hope is there. The hope of being able to sit down with a white couple. The hope of being able to join the congregations of churches. The hope of being equal. But for Martin Luther King, he would go on to continue bolstering all of the faculties of the civil rights movement. And he would begin to become even more fiery, even more significant. But in his significance, he would begin to accrue people that hated. People that wanted him dead. But still he fought, giving years of his life with pain and suffering and struggles, I'm sure, of all kinds that aren't even written in the textbooks. And he also knew that this hate would come for him one day. That hate would be his undoing. And he said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Our loyalties must transcend our race, our tribe, our class, and even our nation. And this means we must develop a world perspective. And so his words began to echo in the minds of white and black people alike. But they would also lead to hate from both white and black people alike. And Martin Luther King knew that his day would soon come. And perhaps you stood there by his side at one point, and you could see perhaps fear or worry, knowing that something was troubling him. And so, in Memphis on April 3rd, 1968, he addressed that look of sorrow, perhaps that look of fear. And he said, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. and he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've promised, and I've looked over and over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know that we as people will get to the promised land. So I am happy tonight. I am not fearing any man. The very next day, Martin Luther King Jr. would be assassinated. And in the assassination, one of the greatest figures of this country, even, as well as one of the most important figures for Black people, left his legacy. A legacy that he would pass down to his kids with a hope, the same hope we've had for over 300 years, that we will be equal. But that wasn't so. And so the years passed by, and it would be another 60 years before a civil rights movement would take place again. Despite all the things that occurred, the brutality of Rodney King's beating, the brutality of America persisted. And while the face had changed, and while many different aspects were out in the open, your hope may still have diminished as you see week after week, year after year, another innocent Black person murdered. And so maybe you questioned, are we really free still? Were we ever free? And then in 2008, Barack Obama is elected President of the United States, the first African American to hold that title, to hold the highest office in the land. And that campaign was founded on hope, a hope for a better future. But it was met with fire and hate. It was met with resistance. And at the end of his term, we had hope, hope that things were changing, that the things of the past had finally been swept under the rug, had been finally tossed into the trash. But then in 2020, we really began to see that hope was still something being sought, that oppression in various forms persists, and its face has changed so dramatically, it's hard to tell. It's hard to notice what is oppression, what is even racism in some cases. As we begin to fight a new epidemic, an epidemic of not being wanted, even in modern society, of cops being used against you as a form of a weapon. as a form of hatred. And so throughout 2019 and 2020, videos are posted all over social media depicting what it really means to be Black in America. And you see Black people being treated differently, kicked out of pools, children's lemonade stands shut down. And then the murder of a man that just tried to buy cigarettes. And perhaps you can find yourself that day. That day you see a Black man come out of a store as a cop car approaches, and maybe you don't think about it too much. The cop car stops, and the cops get out and question this Black man, and it doesn't seem very vicious or brutal at first. It just seems routine. You're Black, you know how this goes. You know that somebody feels threatened just by the color of your skin. And as you stand there and watch the man handcuffed, and then later with a knee on his neck, you may wonder, are you truly free? Are we truly equals? And as the man pleads for breath, and people all around are screaming to let him go, let him breathe, just breathe. The man eventually lies still. And maybe on that day, you realize that the hope of just a few years prior is fleeting. And you see the brutality has persisted, and it is clear. But still, you fight. And still, perhaps you have hope. And so, the significance of Martin Luther King Jr. on this day reflects that hope. And while we have a new era ahead of us, we have a vice president, the first female Black Indian woman to ever take office. Just for a moment, let that hope grow. Let Martin Luther King Jr.'s words resonate. As he said, we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. And so I encourage you all to keep that infinite hope, that fire burning, as sometimes it feels that there is no hope. And after over 300 years of hoping, we still wait. We still wait to be equals. And for 300 years, that has been a driving force in this country. Just wait. Things will get better. Just wait. But things do not get better with just waiting. So, as Lawrence Payne said earlier today, a leading civil rights leader here in the Houston area, hope is not just a fleeting emotional pull. Hope requires action. Hope requires movement. Hope requires us to join and band together as family, as friends, as partners, and to create a future that no longer requires the same hope we have had for generations, but one where we are all equal. And so, as you let these words resonate with you, just begin to feel the body once more. And as you notice your body, perhaps just moving your feet and hands to kind of wake up the senses, and just notice a calm sensation inside of you. Find a nice, calm, peaceful place for just a moment. And as you do, I will give you a couple of minutes to let your experience resonate with you. And when you are ready, you can open your eyes, turn on your cameras and microphones, and if anybody would like to share their experience or thoughts, please feel free to do so. But I thank you all for joining me on this journey. I hope it was meaningful. I hope it was something personal, something that was relaxing, but also emotionally evocative. And I hope perhaps it helped you understand the significance of this day in a way perhaps you hadn't before. So thank you.